Video is on. Broadcast is a minute away. Let's go with an owl shirt on. There it is. Let's see if I can pull it up and share it. On Rainier Avenue Radio. It's Politics Off the Cuff. Hosted by Cawthon. Okay. Connecting.
Alright.
You are on the air.
Let's make it happen, Captain. And you are currently listening to Politics Off the Cuff. DJ Righteousness in my life.
I'm always here for you, Cliff.
Right on. So, hello, friendly neighborhood agitators. Just a little technical disconnection there. You are listening to Politics Off the Cuff on Rainier Avenue Radio, and we are officially on the mic,
Live.
on camera, live. Third time's a charm. Boom. So, I can't take back that last sound effect because unfortunately today we are going to be talking about a current event, something that's going on right now, a shooting in Maryland, as well as a shooting that occurred last night or the other day in Burien. So again,
shoot.
Yeah. So it's gonna get deep today. It's gonna get deep, folks. But also, I want to thank my constant companion, DJ Righteousness.
What's going on, Cliff Cawthon?
A lot of complex stuff. So, for those of you who are unaware, this morning in Northeast Maryland, or at least, I guess, morning for them, so it's the evening now on the East Coast, that they are currently investigating a shooting at Rite Aid in Northeast Maryland, a Rite Aid distribution center. And apparently it was tied to a work grievance.
Okay, so someone just didn't get their prescription wrong and just started shooting people.
Talk about going postal. So I'm going to quote NPR right here. It appears to be a single weapon, and this is the Hartford County Sheriff Jeffrey Gaylor told folks in a news conference report by NPR that appears to be a single weapon that was used. DJ Righteousness, thank you. You only get that type of service on Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station. That was used. So it appears to be a single weapon that was used, a single handgun. We do not believe that there's an additional threat anywhere to our Hartford County community. And then they go on and mention that a Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center spokeswoman told NPR that the hospital admitted 4 patients with gunshot wounds from the attack in Aberdeen. That's in Maryland, not here in Washington. And according to, and we have a video that we want to play that will shine a little bit more light on the details of the shooting. So hook me up, DJ Righteousness.
Multiple people have been killed and wounded in Perryman, which is about 30 miles northeast of Baltimore. The shooting happened at a Rite Aid distribution center. The investigation is still fluid, but we know that the FBI and the ATF are helping out. Here's Hartford County Sheriff Jeffrey Gaylor.
Based on what we know right now, and again very preliminary, the lone suspect in this incident is in custody and is in critical condition at a local hospital. It appears to be a single weapon that was used, a handgun, and there were no shots fired by any of the law enforcement officers responding to the scene.
This is at least the 3rd shooting at a workplace in the U.S. in just the last 2 days. We'll keep a close eye on the story. We'll have much more as we learn it.
Okay. I want to be as sensitive to victims, family of the victims, and want to be as sensitive as possible, but if the cops didn't fire any shots taking that person in, and given the statistics around mass shootings in the United States, I'm gonna bet a white guy did this. Yeah. What do you think, DJ Righteousness?
It was me.
Okay, so we're gonna ignore that and talk a little bit about gun violence, and also Maryland. In fact, has Maryland has passed a number of strict gun control measures, particularly in the last year. However, this still, as they said, is a part of a wave of shootings and workplaces, across the country. So what's going on here? Well, to be very direct about it, we still have a gun problem. In fact, effective gun control has prevented these weapons from being taken out of the hands of people like this gentleman here, who I'm going to guess may have had a history either of mental instability or violence, right? And that's a problem. And also, if you have any thoughts on the issue of gun violence or gun control, whether for or against, feel free to email us at politicsotc@gmail.com. Again, that's politicsotc@gmail.com. Or, you can just comment. Just comment, and we'll read your comments. We'll respond to your comments live on air, and by we, I mean me. So, anyway. Now here's the interesting thing. That I'm looking at this right here, and it reminds me a lot. It reminds me a lot of the shootings, the Aurora shootings a while back, where you had an insane person going and shooting up a theater. In this, if many of you remember, a few years ago, it was someone who was mentally unstable. And if we have people who are getting guns who are mentally unstable, I mean, I think the case is open and shut. But let's listen to the other side on this. So, what does the NRA have to say? Well, multiple gun control bills on the move. That according to the NRA, that this is huge government oversight, and I want to quote them exactly. And this, by the way, this was from earlier this year. This was in March. Right around, I believe there are a couple of different shootings taking place in March. So, according to the NRA, that this would be removing oversight. This House bill that they were that did pass and didn't really remove oversight, but it would basically remove someone's Second Amendment rights. And I love how they word this, that this extreme risk prevention order, which again, when implemented, keeps guns out of the hands of people like this. It will allow almost anyone to petition a court for an ex parte order to remove someone's Second Amendment rights if they consider the individual to be in danger to themselves or others, or simply because the individual possesses a firearm. And they say that this legislation will be ripe for abuse, which is complete bunk, because the piece of legislation that they're talking about, which, if memory serves, actually passed, that this legislation doesn't just allow people to take guns out of the hands of people who may actually be using them for hunting, may actually not be mentally ill and just legitimately be a gun collector. Who knows? But people who are not stable, on the other hand, this gives us a legal mechanism to be able to take guns out of those people's hands. Or if, let's say, they have some kind of criminal background and want to spread around guns, such as the kind of dealers of death that we see that profit them from getting their hands on guns. And this saves lives. But not according to the NRA. Because the quote-unquote longest running civil rights organization, DJ Righteousness, I'm not even making that up, that's what they call themselves.
The NRA?
Yep. Yeah. No. They're We Shall Overgun, I think, is a theme song. we shall overshoot. Right? By the way, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to us troll the NRA a little bit on, and that's for National Rifle Association. For those of you that don't know, here on Politics Off the Cuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. If you just tuned in, we were discussing the recent shooting in Maryland where someone who was, quote unquote, mentally ill, right? Someone who decided to commit a criminal act and shoot up a Rite Aid distribution center in Maryland was recently apprehended, right? Now, here's what is so crazy about the NRA. You ready for this, DJ Righteousness?
Hit me with it, Cliff.
The majority of their membership has been shown time and time again in polls actually do support gun control measures such as this. They support background checks. They support all these things. But the issue is that when someone joins the NRA, or when someone gets a rifle or becomes a part of this like rifle association, right? That for the most part, it's only to be able to get access to different perks. That the NRA provides a lot of commercial perks, right? A lot of access to shooting ranges, things like that, places to practice. So a lot of people really don't consider the fact that the NRA is going out there with this far right-wing agenda, led by its current director, Wayne LaPierre, right? And his little PR hustler, Dana Lash, right? That they may not realize that those people are pushing pieces of legislation or pushing efforts to destroy pieces of legislation that could save lives. And their dollars, their money to maintain that membership just in order to be able to have access is actually going to making our communities more unsafe, to making our communities sicker, right? In fact, speaking of our communities being unsafe, let's talk a little bit about the tragedy that happened recently, right? So, DJ Righteousness, you might know where I'm going with this, right?
Honestly, no.
So, unfortunately, and our deepest condolences to our family, there was a shooting in Burien where a 51-year-old woman, Gabriela Reyes, was shot, and was shot by a stray bullet. And this was a shot that was fired by two young men who were attempting to do a drive-by, and unfortunately, she was caught in the crossfire. And this is someone who was a volunteer, someone who decided to get involved in her community, but also someone who was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And just to go a little bit off script for a moment, I've seen this happen to people I care about, so, my deepest condolences are with the Reyes family right now, but also that for the two young men that shot that bullet, that you took a life, but if you have a chance of getting your lives back, know that it's not worth it. Because the people that make money off of flooding our communities with guns, people that sell guns to young men like yourself, or people that don't mind selling guns under the table and talk about it being your right and talk about respect and pump you up, they're not the ones being put away, and then they're not the ones facing an increasingly hostile society where more and more people that look like myself, more and more people who have little money in their pockets, just like DJ Righteousness and myself, everyday people.
Speak for yourself, Cliff. Money in my pocket?
No, I said little, very little, very little. Let's be real. Like if we put together change in our pockets right now, we might just have $1, right?
Possibly.
Right?
We might be able. Yeah. We won't even be able to run the light rail with that.
Yeah, you know what? We can maybe buy a shoelace to tie up one of our sneakers.
Okay, good.
Yeah, right.
All right. Shoes won't fall off.
Well, one shoe won't fall off, right? And that's real. And that's real. And that's what people are facing these days. And according to data, and this was actually compiled by the CDC, and this is very interesting. So I just want to read off a study that was done by study that was done by the CDC or reviewed in 2018. So, well, this year. So, particularly in June, there are a couple of key elements that they found in preventing gang violence, and they came up with a number of reasons, right? And of course, I'm not, an expert, but it appears that you have people very young, from 13 to 15, starting, exposed to these situations where they can get involved in these organizations where they're able to get access to money, where feel respect, and for all of the hostile police or the police cruisers they see walking by, where in school they may not feel validated, on the streets they walk, they don't see any opportunities, right? Or they see an opportunity to work a menial job and they have bigger dreams that aren't validated by anyone. They have this quote unquote opportunity, right, to be somebody. And according to the study, that implementing partnerships that really supplement the strength of families and communities, and providing resources and providing other things for them to do, instead of putting more cops on corners or just simply writing these young people off as lost causes, prevents shootings, right? So if you're tuning in and you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, you're listening to Politics Off Cuff on Rainier Avenue Radio, and you're joining me, Cliff Cawthon, your friendly host and neighborhood agitator, and we're talking about gang violence, the shootings that happened in Maryland, in Burien, just yesterday, and also we're talking about solutions, because on the one hand, this whole argument about how it's infringing upon people's rights to take away their guns, and we got to break that down. So it's no surprise to anyone that, as I mentioned to the folks who are listening right now and who have been listening for a couple minutes, that really this is just a fabricated, it's just a fabricated hysteria that is being pushed by the NRA, saying, "Oh, come and get your guns, come and get your guns," right? Let's be clear. In most countries around the world, not having a gun is a perfectly reasonable thing. In fact, most countries around the world, gun ownership is not some kind of constitutional right. And I mean, let's break this down even further. Why do we say that this is a constitutional right? Well, when we look at our history versus we look at the histories of other countries, there's definitely a history of oppressing black and brown people and having armed, particularly white landowners, to reinforce their dominance over oppressed populations. So that's one element, as well as the slave catchers, in the South, vice squads, or people essentially hired muscle to protect property in the North and the West, right? And the development of modern police force, but also this ethos that if a population is armed, or if the population is armed, they can ward off the quote-unquote other. They can ward off the undesirables and the enemies of the good old USA, of society that deserves inclusion, instead of the society that is shunned. So, and when we think about the rhetoric today, and the bad guy with a gun, you have to protect your home and protect your family from whom? Someone that looks like Uncle Jeff or Uncle Steve? Because when we're talking about when Wayne LaPierre of the NRA or many of these other gun advocates and people that, again, sell guns and spread them out in the streets are talking about quote-unquote protecting your family, they're usually presenting an image of someone that looks like myself. Well, I'm wearing a Bellevue College Association of Higher Education shirt. A little shout out for my union, because we teachers still don't have a tentative agreement. Yeah, but oh, hey, how you doing? We got some guests coming in, right? So you gotta love the open studio plan.
Traffic jam comes on right after politics off the cuff, everybody.
And hey, they just got free advertising, so I guess Traffic Jam should probably advertise politics off the cuff later. But anyway, where was I? Long story short, you have this culture. You have this culture of you have this culture of setting people who setting people who don't look like you, setting people who are traditionally underrepresented members of the community, black and brown folks, poor folks, etc., as somehow the enemy. And more often than not, we end up in a crossfire. And when there's someone who's mentally unstable with access to a gun. Am I saying guns aren't necessarily completely bad? Well, I don't want to make that judgment because, quite frankly, when we look at this holistically, it is not just the tool, but it's also society, but it is the tool, right? Because the folks that want that wiggle room saying, well, guns aren't all bad, right? And who have fun with them, that's fine. But at the same time, freedom does not come over your freedom to be able to go out and shoot and feel some kind of inflated and artificial sense of security does not supersede and is not more important than the need and the right for people to be able to live their lives. Just like Miss Reyes should have been able to live out her life with her grandchildren and her family. Now, since we're talking about local politics, I'm gonna radically shift because DJ Righteousness, where are we at? We're at time maybe for another plug, or should we have Traffic Jam do it?
About one more. I'm good with one more.
One more, and Traffic Jam doing it for coming in. Okay, right. So in that case, in case you're just tuning in, you're listening to Politics Off the Cuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. We're just talking about guns. Now we're going to talk about politics and legislative sorcery.
Ooh.
Or political sorcery. The kind of sorcery that we saw in the news today with Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin. Do you know the political sorcery I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the increase of cops in the Central District after responding to a shooting?
I'm not talking about that one, but that goes along with what I was saying about how that's not going to be a long-term solution, but good one, right? No, I'm talking about the fact that probably the people who are A, just trying to hang on and still live in the Central District, and B, the people who are currently experiencing, either maybe a part of those organizations that are currently doing illegal things, right, that need to just be brought on board something more positive, how they'll probably not really get the mayor's ear more than her very wealthy friends within political circles and within the business community. Now, it's no secret that we've had the mayor on a lot. We've given her a tip of the hat for some policies and a wag of the finger, but take it from a political science professor, folks. That government's supposed to be transparent. Government is supposed to be of, by, and for the people, ideally. Have we had that in the United States? Not really. And usually city halls are it's pretty stereotypical for a city hall to be corrupt. But yesterday, the Seattle Times, and give them one time tip of the hat. Then please don't sue me, Stephen Colbert. So I'm just going to say one time thumbs up. Good substitution. Gotta cover yourself legally, folks. They actually broke a very interesting story on Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin communicating her communications with other political leaders and business leaders, motivating her to rally support in city council and to push behind the scenes to get rid of the employee hours tax. So, and I'm going to read the headline because I think it expresses it better than what I was about to say. Jane Durkin and City Councilman It's awkward. City Council member Lorraine Gonzalez underscored how polling results help spike the city's head tax and offer an unvarnished look at the motivations and strategies behind the abrupt about face. So, it wasn't as scathing as I thought, so. But it does raise some questions.
She got off.
Right. After all, if legislation is basically being made by, if our city is basically being run by text, and you have Mayor Durkin, our council members consulting their friends, which you all want to do, but behind their backs, then where does that fall? Where does that fall in when it comes to who they're really listening to? And B, you have David Rolfe, the former president of SEIU Local 775, Still Union, Nick Hattenhauer, a venture capitalist and extremely rich, as well as, let's remember the interview, how long ago was that, the employee hours tax interview? DJ Richardson's? Months, about like 3 months ago?
Yeah.
So 3 months ago we had on the, people who were pushing the, employee hours tax, the repeal of the employee hours tax. And we had to nail them to the wall that there are some very powerful people, there are some very wealthy donors and local business people who were out front and also behind the scenes helping to push that effort, right? Instead of it being a quote unquote grassroots driven initiative made just by, everyday Joe or everyday Jane. So this raises a question. When it comes to the health of our city, when it comes to addressing shootings in our city or shootings in our region, that if legislation is being made by text, and I should add that this is startling to say the least, that this about face, this change in legislation could be made simply through text, right? Or this push to change legislation could simply be made through text. Who are politicians really working for? When there are solutions in order to stop gun violence, maybe their heart's in the right place, maybe it's not. But the precious lives of people who could be potentially spared and changed, where is the decision going to be made? Out in the open? Or is it going to be made behind closed doors and via text? So, this, from what I'm being told by DJ Righteousness, he did something in the background, and so I don't really know, but we were listening to Politics Off the Cuff on Rainier Avenue Radio, and you will definitely hear a promo from Traffic Jam. So this is your friendly neighborhood agitator, Mr. Clifford Carl Cawthon, and I urge you to keep asking questions, keep pushing, keep agitating, and of course, drop us a line.
Okay, you are off the air.
What'd you think about that?
This is Paul Pearson, host of Start Time. And when I'm not helping bad girls set up their websites, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.
Say what?
Wait, Paul Pierce.
This is your Rainier Avenue Radio.
By the way,
Community update on the Seattle King County
so-
Clinic, a 4-day health clinic that